Not even. I am trying to so I'm using someone's account. I'm sure it is showing even on that side.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Tembela.
Yeah. So it's a colleague's phone. So what basically I'm trying to do now is to is to bring myself onto the screen so that there's no deception.
Yeah. Kodwa eyona nto ibaluleke kakhulu siyakuva. Nabaphulaphuli bayakuva.
Yes.
Yeah. Mamele ke bhuti while kusenjalo man singaqhubekeka kodwa ne while you're still busy trying uba ube khona ndikubona. Hi Zuko. Hello.
Yes.
Yandiva kakhle? Hello.
Yes, I hear you.
Yo, okay.
Yes, I hear you. Clear.
Yeah. Benbuza uba singaqhubekeka ke while usebhizi kwelo cala.
Yes. We can continue. I mean, if of course, I mean, I was just trying to get my video in place, but it seems as if I can't. But we can continue because I'm able to hear you, and as long as people as well.
Yeah, no. Sure, nam ndikuva kahle.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Siqale kuyoqala mhlekazi masikwazi man bephulaphuli bami mabakwazi ba ngubani.
Mandizibulisele kuwe Damlo okokuqala, ndizibulisele kubabukeli nabaphulaphuli ngokubanzi kwiindawo zonke abakuzo. Igama ayingothembela Vokwana ngoZuko Yigi. I just felt the need to clarify that again, as the post that was shared suggests that today you are in conversation with me or I am in conversation with you. uZuko lwa eMthatha kodwa ke inkaba yakhe neengcambu zingapha emampondweni ePort St John's.
Wow.
Ndafunda ke eMthatha ndaqhubeleka ndazozibhaqa ndiseMonti. Ndingumhlali ke ngoku waseMonti, ikakhulu ogxile kumculo wesinqe sejazz. Ndiyacinga into yokuba uhambo lwam nolwakho ludibene kuloo ndawo. Yiyo loo nto
Yabona bomnandi bayo le nto sikuyo sikwazi nokukhupha ubuhlobo nje msinyane nje. Yeah. Ikhona nje ekhonyana Zuko kabamba kancinci yandiva.
Umculo is very communal and allowing for people, we can say.
Hello.
Yes,
yeah, umane ubreaka kuphinde kubekho ne-echo ekhoyo. Yeah, busathini kanene?
Yes, ndiyakuva Tamlo.
Okay, sure. Ungaqhubekeka futhi. Ubumana nje ubreaka wena then bekhona ne-echo ekhoyo.
Okay, bendisathi mhlawumbi singatsho into yokuba zizinwe zalo mculo esikuwo, because we always find jazz to be inclusive. Yiyo nalento and welcoming, yiyo nalento kulula into yokuba wenza ubuhlobo nabantu kwindawo zonke odibana nabo kuzo.
Yeah, beautiful. Now Zuko kasibalisele man eweke look lo mbuzo ubuzwa qho kumuntu wonke ngoba ke abantu bangena ngendlela ezahlukeneyo kwezomculo. Wena iqale kanjani? Yenzeke ingabe kuthini ze ube ungene apha kwezomculo? Into mhlambe ifumene kwifamily or mhlambe ekhuleni nje ku-environment yakho zakubekho umuntu ucula ekhaya kodwa yaba into mano udibana nayo apha esithubeni yade yabe isondele kuwe kakhulu?
Mhlawumbi iyawuba ngathi nam ndithetha ibali eliqhelekileyo eliqhele uchazwa ngabantu abaninzi. Umculo into endidibene nayo ecaweni. I grew up in a Baptist church, but back in the day, my church was not really instrumental. It was rather a vocal church. And so before I am a bassist, which is something perhaps we will still delve into, I'm a vocalist. So ndiyandawuqala ekhaya, and then ecaweni kumane nixelelwa into yoba heyi praktizani nilungiselele ucula. So umama ke besibethwa nobethwa ke ekhaya xa singafuni ucula, side sigrogrisa nogrogrisa into yoba uThixo uzawusithatha isipho senu ukuba anisisebenzise. And we were always afraid of that. So we would always have to, try by all means to render some items at church. But the love really grew as I became of age myself. In my teen years, when one of my brothers left home, for East London to study music. And when he came back, he told me that, he was learning piano. And I was always fascinated by piano against the keyboard style that was popularized, in church music. And he then came back and told me that my other brother that stays here in East London, who later became influential in my developmental years, that he had, extended his, grace to teaching him how to play piano. But upon, engaging, he also plays bass. And I was like, I think I'm interested in this instrument. And it would then, take me a year after that conversation. And then 2008, I was in East London enrolling, we construction studies. And little did I know that it was my way to be introduced into this whole thing. And where I should have been concentrating much more in the construction studies, I would be receiving calls as a good, hey man, you can come check me out. I have this song. And my brother would then introduce me to like umculo ngaloo ndlela, especially bass. And then I started, learning this instrument. And from then, I never looked back. So I was always playing, but still within, the church parameters. I mean, as much as, I then, joined a band that was not necessarily doing your mainstream gospel. But all those were just, ways to sort of socialize me and really, carve my own path into the jazz paradigm, which I'm exploring to this day. Then I finished, my time in UFH. In the institution I was in, and then I worked in the construction field for 6-7 years, but music was always calling me. But the turnaround moment was when I met with, I was doing a jazz concert in Tata, because over the years I developed love for jazz. And then I started exploring this with the people I was playing with, and who also had the foundation of jazz. And then we organized a festival, we organized a concert in Tata Country Club, which was a success. But out of that concert, I collaborated with Papa Mamwandi. That's a famous name to those that are following jazz in the Eastern Cape and beyond. And he was the MC for that concert. And by having him as the MC of the concert and the concept, we were creating demand for another concert, which would then, evolve into a festival in Queenstown, still in a month. So in less than 30 days, we had to plan for a festival, which was self-funded. We then did that festival in Queenstown, and which was done, I forgot this area. It's a suburbia, and then we played the main concert at Queen's Casino. And then we had a township leg at Mlungisi Township. And while we were still, preparing for that, we were joined with Zakhile Smani, Phumlani Ndidi. But the turnaround moment, which I always feel it is important for me to highlight, was when we were deliberating on the repertoire, and how we had carved the concept was that each person collaborated with would come with their compositions. And if you would know, or many people would know, Phumlani Mtiti is a heavy name. He boasts of, great accolades, jazz development internationally and, nationally as well. He came with music that was written in a very interesting way that, had myriad time signatures, and odd time signatures. So you'd be playing, say, for example, 3/4, and then throughout, the bars you find a 5/4 or 7/4 type thing. And it was really hard to, play that music. And we tried playing it, but he said, okay, cool. We don't have time to go into this music. Let's save it for another time so that we can workshop it and then perform it. And he said it in a very, graceful manner. But, as he said it, I was like, I just, someone has written a beautiful letter to you, but this beautiful letter you can't read. So meaning that the love this person is sharing or giving you, to some extent, you are incapable of receiving. So this was a personal interpretation. I then took it upon myself that really I need to go and study music so that I can be able to interact with my brothers at a level where they are, especially if they are writing love letters to me as a brother. So I must be able to respond to their love letters. So that was a very wake-up call for me, because I was like, in as much as I was still going back to the construction field, this question was, hounding me like, when are you going to do this, Zuko? And as many people know, like, the music scene is quite a cold space, very technical in the sense that you need to be established resourcefully so that you can have a beautiful life. So now I was then, confronted by, reality that, Zuko, you are from a construction space, so you are used to really, living comfortably. And by the way, I met Papa in the construction space, So,
Oh, he's an architect.
yes, he's an architect. And now I was faced with a reality that I would be, I'm sacrificing that salary, and, I'm going to school, on full-time basis. And the time came for me. I just had to jump in, and I did my, BMAS degree at University of Forte. So that's really how I got, initiated into the whole, jazz arena. Yes, Tamlu?
Yes, I'm here. I'm listening. Sometimes there's an echo, but of course we heard everything that you said.
Okay.
Yes.
No, thanks very much.
We can continue.
Yes. I think in a nutshell, that's really how I came into, the jazz space. One, as a student who took interest, in this music, and before actually enrolling, formally into an institution, or rather in a program that would later, equip me with skills to propel me, into some, and so what I'm touching on here is really coming here. And of course, this journey is filled with me attending concerts by some jazz musicians and me really taking that decision that if I don't.
Hi, Zuko. But of course, I mean, we got the juice of what
Yes,
you
yes,
just wrote. Yeah,
yeah.
Look, we got the juice, you know, of the story that you're telling us about yourself. You've done very well. And also in terms of your growth, you know, as you're telling us the story that you've met also people like Abu Papam and Abom Titi, and they came up with the, you know, the different things that prepared you for, you know, a way forward, like you're talking about. Titi came up with some songs that, you know, you still playing. There's a change of time signatures between the songs that made you realize that, look, I still have to work more, you know, you still have, and for me, you know, because I've been watching you, you know, I've been following you even on social media. I've listened also to your interview with UKG Mwekits when you were in Grahamstown. I know Guti also there's a concept, you know, that you initiated about I think it's called Jazz Umcimbi.
Yes.
Tell us more about Jazz Umcimbi. How did it come about? And what really made you, of course, I mean, for me, I was listening as I was saying, but of course for my listeners, what really came into your mind, you know, for you to come up with a concept like that as Jazz Umcimbi?
You know, part of the thing sometimes we deal with as musicians is really struggling to find ways to bring yourself into you know, the practice that you're engaged in, either, you know, in the institution or, you know, on bandstand. I'm saying this because, for example, I started asking myself questions like, how does it look like, you know, when we get to, you know, perform umcimbi, you know, as a sonic, or, you know, as opposed to you going physically there. And it came about around about the time because also we were dealing with COVID, where there were restrictions and people would not, you know, have access, you know, to imicimbi, and you know, we could not do those things, you know, until the restrictions were uplifted. So I really had to think deep, like about ways in which the gap, you know, could be bridged. And it really had to, you know, spiral down to one thing. What is it that underpins, you know, umcimbi? And the song really came out to be one of the emblematic, you know, things, you know, that are always there when umcimbi is carried out. As a lot of people would know that umcimbi, you know, is of course a word for a traditional ceremony. And then I was like, okay, what is carried within the songs of umcimbi? What is it that really, you know, makes this song, you know, songs like special, or really be attributed to umcimbi, or be the attributes of umcimbi? And then I looked into the text and what's embedded, you know, in these songs. And then I started really exploring and trying to find ways of really, you know, interpreting these songs, you know, through the jazz lens. For example, a song like Isiyalu Yalu, there's a song we sing back home, you know, wesiyalu yalu wemayaluzela size kuwo lo mzi sizothetha ngalo mzi asiyazi bekhaya kwaywa ngaphi. A lot of it resonates with people, you know, that, you know, are cast on. When I really, you know, form that song through, you know, the jazz lens, and I get to, you know, arrange the song and come up with progressions that really don't water down the melody, but you start finding possibilities of really expanding the possibilities around, the song, in which, so around, the song and ways in which the song finds itself where we are and the interpretations that we derive out of the song. So I then had to sit down and really, come up with ways of composing, music that really reflects my upbringing, traditional sensibilities and of the communities, and the Suka Kuzo, or that have been, influential in my upbringing as a Xhosa man, So really Umcimbi was about that, and really, using that as a way to reference, imvelaphi yethu sisukaphi. So when you're listening to this music, are you able to find yourself? Does this music, speak to? Again, this was this was, pushing this idea that it is possible to enroll into an institution and still emerge, someone who still relates and someone who has not lost, their voice, but instead you've found, better ways to sort of articulate yourself and your ideas, and ways in which, our music from home, can be, preserved and, adapted into many stages globally, So really, when I thought of Umcimbi, I was sitting on thoughts like perhaps it's high time that our music is not separated from who we are, that we take our music wherever we go to. So if I go to Joburg, I must be able ukunqunga, I must be able ukombela, I must be able ukugwija. And I just use jazz, as a tool to help me find my way around, ways of exploring, these forms of musics that I've just mentioned.
Oh man, Zuko, hey, time is always a problem, man. Hey, Kakulu, man, Kakulu, you only left with 1 minute, but I can squeeze in another minute. But look, Zuko, I feel like there's quite a lot that we haven't spoken about. Even some of my questions in the Nazo for and Akang and this booze. Because you see, also with this show, I let it control itself. The ends are even That's why sometimes I'm wondering booze, but do I have to bring this or do I have a script? I don't write script. We just got to have a conversation. I mean, we'll see. We'll just lead each other well, and my guest, to even over the show because it's about the guests, So when I feel with it, there's quite a lot that we still need to tap into. Like I said, just 1.5 minutes. Zuko, I'm coming to East London, as you know, and detained out. In Gabandu, East London, your name was topping the list. Which you are one of the guys, and through umsebenzi ndikubonileyo uwenza since ndikwazi, ndikubonile umsebenzi wakho omhle owenzayo, and I know that you're still going to continue doing the work, and of course it's going to grow from where it is now. Also bring in nabantu abatsha, the youth, people that still need to know more about music and also about the kind of concept that overnight, because I mean, look, sifunde emntwini ngento ayenzayo sokwazi ucreate nezethu izinto. You know what I'm saying? When you've created this, how can I call it? This program, with each Umcimbi, but of course, there are quite a lot of other things, and was you're also involved in also, putting up some performances for bands. That's why now in German Caesar East London September, you're the guy who's going to be hosting us. I'm quite excited. I've got a very nice band, but of course, some guys confirm ngokusekulate, but the band is complete. I'm going to send you the stuff. Zuko, amazokugqibela bhuti man, in this 1 minute iseleyo ngoku, just amazokugqibela.
It's a lot, For example, I wouldn't want to forget, the importance of really having mentors in this space and for really having teachers. For example, it comes up, quite often when I am talking that I come from, the institution of great, mentors and teachers. For example, I'm using a Zoom, and the name that's appearing to viewers and listeners is Tembela Vokwana. And he's been one of the greatest, teachers that I've been privileged to have, especially in the field of, African philosophy of music. And I would not even, forget, Dr. Makatini, and, for really, harnessing the performance actual and the research, component of this whole thing. So I feel it is important that every time, I owe sometimes, my journey to these people that have been instrumental. And of course, there's a number of them, that I'm not mentioning here. And at the right time, I'm going to talk about them. But what I'm saying is that there's a beautiful thing happening in the Eastern Cape, and it's bigger than me, it's bigger than anyone else, and it really needs us all to collaborate. And we know the history of this country, and we know the position of Black people, especially in relation to the resources they have and not have. So I see Vukani as one of those plug points. I see what I do as one of those plug points. So at some point, all these plug points, they need to converge in one space so that we're able to sort of, map out, ways in which we could be of assistance to each other. For example, East London is very big, and one of the greatest advantages about East London is that, it has an airport. So wherever you are in East London, it takes you less than 10 minutes really to get to the airport. And there's an automotive industry in East London, and tourism is one of the things that, are beautiful. And East London is a university town with the presence of two institutions, the WUSU and the UFH, and still not too far from here, there's Makanda and Rhodes, and still not too far from here, there's WUSU Mtada, there's NMU. So basically, if we're trying to look into the creative ecosystem, involved and committed, to developing, is that if we can really look into these spaces, we start to realize that if we join hands, there's more that, Eastern Cape is capable of doing. And of course, with the same migration of people, I mean, if you look into the big cities, they big by names now, but the global era, especially digitization, is teaching us that we can do anything wherever we are. So we just need to assist each other and create, the platform so that it can be, inclusive and accommodative, to everyone else who wants to plug in. So this is like creative, economies, they form part of the future economies of this country or the global world. So it's one area that I encourage even,
Hi, Zuko.
There's, sponsorships by all means. Yes.
Look, my friend, I'm going to leave you right here. Right here. As wabangenacho ukuthi le nto lixesha iluchaba thina sobabini sawudibana very 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 soon, and as I was saying earlier on, you gotta have to come back. Yeah, you are gonna come back here. Awusikagqibi futhi ube nemini emnandi. I'll see you soon. Sabona kwamsinyane. Sabe say East London.
Thanks very much. I really appreciate it.
Good man. Have a good
Keep up the good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Same to you. Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye-bye to the listener. Bye-bye.